Well, hello, everyone. This is Dr. Barbara Williams Skinner, and I'm the co-convener of the National African American Clergy Network and the president of Skinner Leadership Institute. I am so excited to be sharing this election protection webinar for the state of Michigan that will be taught by the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. Our hosts for this are not only the National African American Clergy Network, but also Sojourners, the Council of Baptist Pastors of Detroit and vicinity, the NACP, and so many others joining in this battle to make sure that every vote is counted. Our special focus and vision for this campaign is that pastors, we hope in their clergy collars, that's what Lawyers and Collars is about, and would be standing in partnership with lawyers as a moral and legal covering, protection for vulnerable voters on election day. We're 50 days away from what we have been saying for almost a year is one of the most important elections of our lifetime. This election will decide the kind of America we will be. Will it be just and equitable for all people, or will it be America for just for a few? We will continue this long nightmare of voter suppression for people of color and the elderly and immigrants and others, or will we have an America that calls we the people, all of us? So we are so grateful to be able to present this to you. We'll ask you at any point that you're looking for information about the TurnOut Sunday Lawyers and Collars campaign, just to go to turnoutsunday.com, turnoutsunday.com. As you'll hear, this is not a political campaign. This is one rooted deeply in Matthew 25. You will hear that. That is our call to care for the least of these. And to get us started in the way that we know we must when we're in a battle, and we are in a battle for the soul of America and for the votes of those who have been locked out. We are asking a great man and a great friend of all of us, the Reverend Dr. James C. Perkins. He's the social justice leader for the Council of Baptist Ministers of Greater Detroit and vicinity. He is the senior pastor of Greater Christ Baptist Church in Detroit, and the immediate past president of the Progressive National Baptist Convention, coming to us for an opening prayer. Dr. Perkins.
Good afternoon to everyone. May we bow and pray. Eternal God, our Heavenly Father, how thankful we are to you for life and for all of your blessings to us. And we come to you at this challenging and difficult time in the history of our nation to seek and to ask your blessings upon us. We know that we're dealing with a situation, oh God, where injustice and truth has fallen in the streets. And we need you now to stir up within us a desire to move in a way that will, in this election, change the course of this land. We pray that you would bless us in these moments. We pray that you would stir up within the hearts of your people everywhere the need to see how involved we need to be in this election so that your name will never be defamed, that your name will never be blasphemed, even as it is in this nation at this time. Be with us in these moments. Bless this presentation and help us to use it that victory might be won. In the name of our Lord and Christ, amen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Perkins. And now we'll have the president of the Council of Baptist Ministers of Greater Detroit and vicinity, and the senior pastor of Liberty Temple Baptist Church in Detroit, the Reverend Dr. Stephen Bland, greet us. And I believe he may have some information for us about the drop boxes for the absentee ballot. Dr. Bland.
God bless you, Dr. Skinner, and to all of you who are on this call, grace and peace from God our Father and to his Son, the Lord Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit that gives us guidance and will take us safely through in this election that we are now about to embrace. I welcome you all to this wonderful second opportunity we have for training in this election protection webinar that we are sharing. Today, our emphasis is with lawyers and scholars so that we address the issue, particularly of voter suppression, and how we as people of faith might be able to push back and fight back and stand for the righteousness that we know that God would have us to have as a people who have a voice and a vote. Because our vote is our voice. And we want to make sure every one of us has the opportunity to encourage other people to do the same. The Council of Baptist Pastors is excited, and we're energized, and we are moving forward now as was stated, 50 days away from this election moment. And we are asking those of you who are on the call to be as well encouraged every day to do something that moves us closer to victory. In Michigan, as you know, we have the opportunity to have same day registration, and we have the ability to have no excuse registration and other things that have been relaxed in the last election, but we don't want to take for granted that we still got to get our souls to the polls. So in order to deal with some of the voter suppression that is coming around us, particularly when it comes to DeJoy being placed over the Postmaster General and then slowing up the mail process, and we see systemic processes where 671 machines were taken away from post offices and mailboxes removed. So in the area of Detroit, what we have been able to do through our city clerk is we have voting centers and drop boxes that will be situated around the city. There will be a total of 51 that will be situated in various places. That list will be released hopefully soon by the city clerk, and then we will make that a public notice as to exactly where they are. I can say that Greater Christ Church, where Dr. Perkins is pastoring, and Liberty Temple Baptist Church, where I pastor, they're on 6 Mile and Greenfield, both will be sites, and the other sites will be utilized. I'm on the west side, he's on the east side at Iroquois and Mac, but we will have a list of all of those places where after September 24th, persons who are able to cast a vote to vote early can find that drop box. So we're grateful to our city clerk, who will be on our third call, and we'll give announcements at the end of this webinar. In early October, we'll have our third opportunity to come together and strategically talk about how to utilize that. But I just want to just close this by saying to all of the persons who are on this statewide call, thank you for being energized, and thank you for embracing this election protection webinar. And a special thanks to Dr. Skinner and to Brother Jim Wallace for being our presenters on today to help us to get over the line of victory. Because again, November 4th, we will have sanitized the White House to move forward, to do what we have to do, so God's righteousness will be as well on earth as it is in heaven. God bless you. Dr. Skinner, go right ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much. I feel so much better knowing that you've got those drop boxes, so no one needs to get their health at risk in order to cast that absentee ballot. Thank you, and Dr. Perkins, for always being on the case. And now I'd like to present a man who for over 50 years, at least 50 years with Sojourners almost next year, has been in the spirit of Isaiah, railing out against those who render unjust laws. That's Jim Wallace. Jim Wallace is a public theologian, a writer, a teacher, an author of my favorite book is America's Original Sin, Racism, White Privilege, and the Bridge to a New America.
Yes.
He will talk to us about the faith-rootedness of our campaign. Jim, thank you for being here.
Well, it's a special blessing to be with clergy, friends, and faces from my hometown of Detroit and my home state of Michigan. Let me be very clear. There are people in this country and people in Michigan who are planning to steal this election. Now, there is a text that comes to mind for me now almost every day. It says, "We wrestle not just against flesh and blood, not just politics, but principalities and powers and evil in high places." We are engaged here in literally spiritual warfare. We feel it and see it every day. And when you have spiritual warfare, you need weapons, spiritual weapons for that warfare. John Lewis always reminded us that perhaps the greatest weapon we have for nonviolence, for spiritual warfare is the vote. So we are preparing, readying our weapon, our spiritual weapon of the vote for this election. When there is one moment of racialized policing or voter suppression because of the color of someone's skin, that is a violation of the first book in the first chapter in the Bible, Genesis 1:26, where it says, God made us all in God's image and likeness. So every single effort to suppress one vote is an assault, an offense, an attack against the image of God, Imago Dei. And we've been sharing that with election officials. This is for us, not just a political issue, certainly not a partisan one. This is a matter of faith. This election is a referendum on democracy. It's a referendum on race, and it's a referendum on faith. So faith is on the ballot for us this year. And so they are planning, but so are we. We're getting ourselves ready. Our networks, our communities, our churches, our young people, we're getting ourselves ready to be prepared for spiritual warfare between now and the election day. So I want to say to all of you, my brothers and sisters, we are going to be ready for this one. We're going to be ready to exercise our identity as the children of God, made in the image of God. And young people like action. Well, we got action now. We got action in all these states. We're going to protect the vote because that's what God intends for us to do. So let us get ready and let us prepare. And the Lord will be with us, hovering around us, over us, among us, and they're going to see something they've never seen before. So I'm blessed to be part of that with you, and we are together from now all the way until the election. Bless you all for being on this call.
Thank you so much, Jim. And because you said we are ready, and we are, not just because we say so, but we have the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under Law as our major partner, and they've been in this work for over 20 years of election protection. So we are so excited right now to bring to you Ms. China Baldwin, Senior National Coordinator, Ms. Armani Edie, Organizing Fellow, and Attorney Julie Hauck, Managing Counsel for Election Protection, to walk us through what is it that we as pastors and church-based lawyers need to know. What do we need to do to prepare ourselves to protect the vote on election day? So China Baldwin, Armani Edie, Attorney Julie Hauck, we are ready to hear our instructions from you. Thank you so much.
Well, hi, everybody. As Dr. Skinner just said, my name is China Baldwin. I'm the Senior National Coordinator for Election Protection with the Lawyers Committee. And so I have the distinct privilege of kind of kicking us off and starting today's objectives. So if you just take a look at the slides, I'm going to briefly kind of walk us through the overall structure of election protection. My colleague Armani is going to kind of go through what your role is going to be on election day. We're going to go back and kind of talk through some of the resources and tools that you're going to want to have with you on the ground. And then we're going to round it out with a little bit about Michigan election law so that folks are well prepared. So election protection, as Dr. Skinner mentioned, is the largest nonpartisan coalition of organizations, including attorneys, organizers, Greek organizations, churches, kind of folks all across the country that are both legal and grassroots that are working round the clock to really handle any of these kind of attacks on democracy and attacks on voter suppression. And so really what we kind of have here is an overview of what the program is about. You all will be working as an extension of election protection under the specific hotline that you all have, but really the coalition is a year-round group of folks working around the clock, kind of doing voter education work, answering the national hotline, doing poll worker recruitment, and of course litigation when and where necessary. And so we have the national hotline number, but then we're of course active in the ground, currently actually in 34 states for 2020. So as I kind of mentioned, the hotline is one big piece, but then the field program is the other. So we kind of split our work into two buckets. One being the hotline where voters are calling in specifically for the 866-R vote hotline. But you all will be having your hotline where pastors will be kind of calling in. Thanks, Tina. Calling into the 833 for turnout. And then you all will be serving as EP ambassadors. So you all are going to be the folks that are going to be on the ground the day of, interacting with voters, kind of handling things in real time and reporting any of the issues that you're having into that hotline number. So on election day, the main things you kind of want to keep in mind is that your main kind of point of contact is really going to be your state lead and state attorney, and then kind of going up into the hotline where you have questions. So you all being the pastors, church-based lawyers, being kind of the hands, like I said, hands and feet on the ground, really interacting with voters, and the support that you'll kind of have the day of will be your lawyers and callers, state lead and attorney, and then that hotline number again. So I'm going to go ahead and pass really quickly to my colleague Armani to kind of talk about your role as an EP ambassador.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Armani Edie. So I'm going to walk you all through what your shift will look like on election day. So one, you will be assigned a polling place in which your field captain will give you that. And then we're asking that you show up on time. So usually when polls open, we ask that volunteers show up about 30 minutes in advance of polls opening or whatever shift time that you have to ensure that you have everything that you need. And then given that we're in COVID and we're in a pandemic, we definitely want to keep you safe, right? So we want you all to wear masks and protective gear, whether that's gloves or whatever have you, to ensure that you're practicing social distancing and have what you need to interact with voters. And then, of course, orientation. We would love for you to introduce yourselves to the poll workers at the site so they're familiar with who you are, letting them know that you're nonpartisan and that you're here to assist voters. And of course, again, maintaining social distancing. And then lastly, helping voters and recording interactions are really, really essential to you as an EP ambassador. Kina, you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, and bring your mask. We have top issues and FAQs provided by the Lawyers Committee that you can carry with you on paper, or you can access it online, and China will walk you through that. Your credentials just as a election protection volunteer. However, lawyers and callers decides to identify you with gear, your phone and charger, definitely making sure that you have a portable charger. There are volunteers that run out of their phone batteries, so making sure you have those things. Layers of clothing, because November is cold. I know Michigan gets cold, and so definitely ensuring that you have that. Snacks and water, comfortable shoes because you will be standing. And if you need seating or accommodations, please let your field captain know. You can go back quickly. And then, of course, intake forms that will be provided and extra paper and pens in case you have to write things down. Next slide. So your responsibility, right, is to assist voters and be EP's eyes and ears on the ground and identifying and reporting problematic practices. And so I'll walk you through what exactly those are. So when you call into the hotline, there are a series of issues that you may face in assisting voters with. One is like broken machines, right? So like a machine isn't working, hasn't been running for a minute, so you call into the hotline. Poll workers giving wrong information. We've seen that happen in several places, and so ensuring that voters know what they need to know and flagging that for the hotline in case it becomes a widespread thing. Intimidating flyers or police presence. This is very big as we gear up for November. On election day, you will see police at the polls, but they are not to interfere with the voting process. So definitely making sure we are cognizant of that. Multiple voters reporting they are not on the rolls. We have that again, but there is a step-by-step process that China will take you all through to ensure that voters are registered, that you can know how to check their registration and their voter information and ensure that they're at the right polling place. Of course, provisional ballots, That is also another thing that pops up. Polls opening late and closing early, another issue that we want to look out for, because we want to ensure that voters have the time that's set and making full use of that time. So that's very, very important. Voters who don't speak English and are having language barrier issues, right? We do have the support of language hotline assistance. Similar to this hotline, you can call that hotline and get the language we have it in Spanish, or our partners have it in Spanish, Arabic, and different languages to support. So calling that in and directing voters to those language assistance hotlines. And then lastly, accessibility is a big issue, right? So making sure that if your polling place is not accessible, calling into the hotline and letting it be escalated so we'll know on our side what's happening. Next slide, please. And so, how do you report these issues? Great question. So you call into the turnout number, and what you'll need are a few things. So you need the voter's name and contact information in case someone has to follow up with them. Polling location is very, very important. So if you can get that information. Voters' racial and ethnic identification is important as we look for trends, right? We want to ensure that we have the full story, and if it's happening to a demographic of people, having that supporting evidence as well. And details. Details are extremely important. As much details as you can gather is helpful to us as we navigate certain issues. And so we're not asking for a 3-page essay, but we are asking for things that are essential to ensuring that the voters' problem gets solved. And then, of course, if you have any questions, so call your field captain. They are your point of person on the ground, or point of contact on the grounds, and can be best to assist you with any of your needs. And then again, like I said, reporting data is extremely important because it allows us to follow up on the escalation end. Data helps us inform best policy and practices. And then when you capture a lot of data, it helps on following up on election day and after. So there are some things that on election day we won't be able to follow up because it takes a longer time. And so allowing us to have as much information as possible allows us to do what we need to do on and after election day. So things to remember: call the turnout hotline number. That is so important for any questions you may have. Also identifying yourself as a lawyers and callers, field volunteers, very important. We are nonpartisan, meaning we do not take sides. We help all voters with whatever question, regardless of political party. Wearing a mask, your protective gear, essential. We want you all to be safe. And especially like when you're helping people, making sure you're keeping that 6 feet distance and everything like that. Don't refer to yourself, right? As a lawyer, or voter as a client. We're trusting that you all are out in the field as a volunteer and identifying yourself as such. And then of course, please be polite. It's like going to a restaurant, and if you have bad service, you never want to come back again, right? And so this is the same method we're trying to use. Be polite to people, be warm and welcoming. November is already a tough time for a lot of people. So we want to make sure that volunteers are out there being the friendly faces that you all are, and ensuring that people are getting the help that they need. Next slide, please. So China will take you all through the tools and resources. And if you have any questions, please continue dropping them in the chat. We're happy to answer after.
Awesome. Thanks, Armani. So yeah, I'm going to take some time to kind of briefly go through the tools and resources. Since we only have a short amount of time together, I'm going to mention these resources and really encourage you all to spend some time kind of playing around with these. I'll walk you through how to find them, but just wanted to flag that. So in regards to answering questions, my colleague Julie's going to do a great job at breaking down Michigan election law. And so I'm sure you all are going to be really well prepared after this training, but it is September and November is a couple of months away, right? And so it's going to be really common and probably going to happen where folks are going to forget information. And Michigan is a really complex place, right? Even though there's a lot of progressive legislation, it's going to be a lot to remember. So these resources are going to come in handy when you're out there on the field trying to remember all of the things that we talked about today. So the first one is going to be the Michigan top issues and FAQs. These are documents that are provided by the Lawyers Committee, and I'll kind of walk those through separately, so I won't spend too much time with it now. Number 2 is the Michigan Voter Information Center. So it's kind of a piece off of you all's Secretary of State's website where you can look up voter information, including their registration status, their poll location, things like that. And that's going to really be the main tool you're probably going to use on Election Day. Most of the questions that you're going to get are really like, am I in the right location? And if they realize that they're not on the ballot, then, not on the ballot, on the rolls, then finding their actual location. So that's going to be your main resource probably. And then 3, your field captain is going to be that direct line that you're going to have, which you'll get soon. And then of course the 833 turnout number, which is going to be where you're calling in those bigger issues. And I think Armani mentioned this in her slides, but just really wanting to say any of those big issues, things like machines being broken, locations not being open on time, those are things you're going to make sure, even if you're, working to address them right there, you want to still call those into the hotline, right? Because what that does is a volunteer on the other end puts that into our database, the Our Vote Live database, and that's where we're able to keep track of trends and kind of see what's happening across the day. And you all will have a state lead and a state attorney who will be plugged into those coalitions throughout the day, so they'll be getting information back and forth. But just to make sure we're streamlining communications, it's going to be really important to have those bigger things being called into the hotline as well. So as I mentioned, the Michigan Voter Information Center, the site is listed up there. So if you have your phone nearby, you can definitely take a little pic so you can get that site. If not, we can maybe try to get it dropped in the chat for you. But this is something you're going to want to have, on your phone, on your person, when you're out there, because a lot of the questions you're going to get asked is people are going to be trying to figure out if they're in the right location and where to go and if they're registered at all, right? So this is really going to be kind of your bread and butter for the day. So I just want to continue to hone in on it. The bright side about Michigan's site is that you can look up folks' registration a couple of different ways. So if they have a Michigan state ID, their address, you really just kind of need their basic info. So name, last name, address, birth date, or if they have their driver's license, a Michigan driver's license, you can check it that way as well. So you really want to familiarize yourself with this site. You want to get super familiar practicing, looking up voter registration. Like I said, I can't reiterate it enough. This is going to be the main question you're going to get. It happens every year, all the time, every election, and especially in a time like November, where you're going to get a lot of folks who have not voted since like the last 4 years, right? So there's could easily be some changes in their registration status and some changes in their where their location is. And so you're going to really want to make sure you know how to use it. So I have listed there the different ways that you can kind of look up somebody's registration. So as I mentioned before, so the Lawyers Committee provides Michigan top issues and frequently asked questions from voters from each state. So even if, you pack up and move next election cycle and, you want to do work in PA, for example, we still have these top issues and the FAQs. So the top issues is kind of a nice, really easy one pager. I always say if you're going out there on election day and you have like a clipboard or something, I would put this one kind of at your first sheet there, in addition to your contact for your field lead, because it has the like quick and ready answers to questions that voters may have. So what time polls are open, voter IDs, accessibility, things that are probably the most frequently asked questions, which is why they're the FAQs. But I like to say the top issues is kind of like the one-stop shop to kind of get that quick information if you have a voter right there in front of you. You don't want to be fumbling around on the Secretary of State's website or fumbling around in your packet of materials looking for it. You want to kind of have that one handy. And then the FAQs is this more broader guide. And this is just the first sheet of it. But if you go on the 866rvote.org site, and that's 866rvote.org, you can get these on your phone or you can get them printed out. But if you go on there and you click the In Your State page, it'll bring up a beautiful map. On there, you can kind of hover over Michigan, scroll to the very bottom section, it'll say Election Protection Materials, and then you'll see the links for the FAQs and the top issues. So that's where you're gonna be able to find these two pieces that I'm kind of working through right now. But like I said, the FAQ is a lot more of a robust kind of packet. It has probably most of the questions that you're gonna get asked outside of some of those bigger things that you would want to call into the hotline to get some specific information on. And so, like I said, these are really good guides that you're going to want to kind of like carry on your person to keep with you, because if you're not able to retain, you know, kind of all the information Julie's going to go through, or things just kind of slip your mind, it's good to have these both handy. So they're really good resources. Like I said, they are on our 866R Vote site. You just want to click the In Your State tab. Click Michigan and then scroll to the bottom where it says Election Protection Materials. And so we update those. We've been updating them even more lately because of COVID. And so we do our best to keep those updated and kind of go through some of those frequently asked questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Julie, who's going to walk through Michigan election law.
Thanks, China. Hello, everyone. It's Julie Hauk again from the Lawyers Committee. I'm managing counsel for the Election Protection Program, and I could spend probably a few hours talking about Michigan election law, but since we have limited time, I'm going to go rather quickly through these slides, which are really focused on the typical election day problems you may see on the field. We're going to start with voter registration and then voter identification, broken equipment, assistance at the polls for disabled and limited English proficient voters, electioneering, challenges to a voter's eligibility, and absentee ballot issues. So in Michigan, thankfully, there's no longer a hard deadline to register to vote, as there are in many other states. Michigan has same-day voter registration. That means that first-time voters, as well as Michigan voters who have moved out of their township or city more than 60 days before an election, can still register to vote and also cast a ballot on election day, as long as they do it as up to 8:00 p.m. on election day. So they go to their current city or township clerk's office and they take care of both the registration and cast a ballot on election day. What they need to do is to bring proof of residency with them in order to register to vote at the clerk's office. And the proof of residency that's acceptable for voter registration includes documents such as a Michigan driver's license, Michigan personal ID card, utility bill, bank statement, paycheck, or any other government document. If people have moved since they've last voted and are registered to vote, there's two buckets they fall into. One, people who have moved within the same city or township, and they go and can update their address by going to the township clerk's office, or they can go to their old precinct and vote and fill out a change of address form at the precinct by 8:00 p.m. on election day. But if someone has moved, as I said, more than 60 days before the election, they will have to go to their new city clerk or township clerk's office to register by 8 p.m. on election day. Many of the issues we see often go around people going to the polls and finding out they're not on the registration list, and that can happen to people who have been removed through list maintenance processes or because they've moved out of their city or township. We also have a lot of questions that come up about people who have criminal convictions or may be incarcerated. With respect to people who are returning citizens or who actually may still be in jail or prison, Michigan is fairly liberal compared to many of the other states in terms of their restoration of rights. The only time someone who has a criminal conviction cannot vote is when they are serving a sentence in jail or prison. If they are in jail but have not been sentenced, if they are serving a sentence but are not in jail or prison, or if they're on probation or parole, not in jail or prison, or if they've completely served their sentence and are no longer in jail or prison, they can vote. So unlike in Florida, where the state is making people pay off their fines and fees if they've had prior felony convictions, that's not a bar in Michigan as long as they are not serving a sentence in jail and are out of custody. So people often forget that that is available to Michigan voters. And sometimes they even run into problems in the polls with poll workers opining that they shouldn't be able to vote, and that is wrong. So make sure that if someone reports that they've been denied voting because of a criminal conviction and they're out of custody, there's no question that they can vote. We also see common questions about voter ID and what you need. And again, because of the progressive way that Michigan handles this issue is if you don't have your ID in your possession when you go to vote, you say to the poll worker, I don't have my ID, and then ask for an affidavit that they can fill out at the polls and they can vote a regular ballot. Now, you will be asked though when you show up to vote at the polling location to produce ID. And the forms of ID that are acceptable include Michigan driver's license or a state ID card, driver's license or personal information card issued by another state as long as it's current, federal state government photo ID, US passport, military ID with photo, a student identification with photo from a high school or accredited institution of higher learning, and a tribal identification card with photo. But as I said, if the voter does not have those IDs in their possession, they can still fill out an affidavit and vote as long as they're in their correct precinct. Again, because you don't have to show an ID that doesn't match your address, you can show any of those forms of ID that I just mentioned, but it doesn't necessarily need to have the voter's current registration address. And again, if they don't have those forms of ID, they can still request an affidavit and vote. And then another question that comes up, can I vote with an expired ID? Well, again, you can, it depends on the form of ID. Only out-of-state driver's licenses or personal ID cards need to be current. With respect to the other IDs, they don't. But again, if they don't have them in their possession, they can get the affidavit and vote. Another issue that comes up frequently on election day is I couldn't vote because the machines are broken. You should ask the voter how long they were waiting, what the lines look like inside the poll. If they were waiting more than 30 minutes, call into the hotline number to get further instructions, and so that we can escalate those calls to the election officials to get some indication of how they're going to solve the problem. They should be able to at least provide paper ballots or other forms of remedies for those voters when the machines break down. Another question that comes up is I'm disabled and need to get help voting, and also people who either cannot read or write English or have limited English proficiency. And yes, those voters are entitled to receive help at the polls from anyone of their choice as long as it's not an employer or an agent of their union. Another question that comes up and we're likely to see are people who are outside of the polls with electioneering materials from one of the parties, or identifying some issues at the polls, or they want to wear political pins or clothing or hats into the polling place, or harassing voters about partisan or issue matters outside the polling place. Michigan law prohibits active and passive meaning holding up signs or wearing paraphernalia within 100 feet of a polling location and inside the polls. And so that includes displaying election-related materials, soliciting voters, and wearing political buttons, hats, and clothing when voting. EP volunteers must also comply with the 100-foot barrier unless they're credentialed poll watchers. Absentee ballot issues are likely to come up. As you all know, we're having issues around the USPS and the delivery of absentee ballots, and also returning those ballots may be problematic if voters wait too late to return the ballots to their city or township clerk. There's a great way to check the status of absentee ballots with the Michigan Voter Information Center. That was the link that was shown to you a little bit earlier. You go onto that site and you can find out whether the absentee ballot has been received and is ready to be counted, or if it's not there, it won't be there. And what that means is it's not been received yet. A voter who doesn't get their absentee ballot by election day should go to their polling place and fill out a form that reflects that they have not received the ballot and they will be able to vote. If the the voter still has their absentee ballot and wants to vote in person because it's too late to mail it, they should take the absentee ballot with them to the poll, surrender it, and they fill out a form and will also be able to vote. It's really important to know that absentee ballots must be received by the voter's township clerk or city clerk by no later than 8 p.m. on election day, or it will not count. Michigan does not go by what the postmark is, it goes by when the ballot is received. We also anticipate the possibility of challenges both inside the poll and outside with intimidating or harassing behavior. If someone's been challenged inside the poll, they should ask to be sworn by the poll worker, answer the questions about their eligibility, and they should be able to vote. If someone is still unable to vote despite providing that information, we should call the hotline number to report the incident, where we can try and escalate that incident to the election officials. If someone is outside the polling place and is harassing voters, discouraging voters from voting, demanding to see voters' ID, or prove eligibility to vote who are not officials with the election office or the polls, don't engage with them directly, but report that behavior to the hotline so it can be escalated by a hotline specialist. So this is a question and answer section that we would do to sort of get you to think about what you've learned from these slides. The first question is, can I register to vote and vote on election day? Yes, the answer is yes, you can. Michigan has same day voter registration, and you can vote when you register to vote at your township or city clerk's office. The next question is, the poll workers say I'm not on the list here. Backstory, I used to live in another precinct in this county. Again, if you've stayed within your city or township and just moved location in the township, go to the old polling location and update your address and vote. Number 3, my wallet was stolen yesterday. The only ID I have with me is a utility bill. Can I vote? That's not typically a type of ID you could use to vote in Michigan, sorry. Georgia's another one of my states. In Michigan, you can't use a utility bill to vote, but since Michigan allows an affidavit when the voter is not in possession of their ID, they can still go ahead and vote as long as they sign the affidavit. Number 4, my mom speaks Spanish and has limited English proficiency. Can I help her vote? Yes, if she requests your assistance. Under Section 208 of the Voting Rights Act, people who are unable to write or read English are able to have assistance at the polls. Number 5, is this going to be a problem, voter asked, pointing to his Vote for Trump t-shirt. It will be a problem if they're within the 100-foot barrier to the polling station. It'll also be trouble for them if they try to go inside, because that's a form of electioneering that's not allowed inside the poll or within 100 feet of the entrance. Number 6, I never received my absentee ballot. Can I still vote? Yes, you can. You can go to your polling location and fill out a form confirming you didn't receive the ballot, and you can still vote a regular ballot. Number 7, can people inside the poll challenge my right to vote? Under Michigan law, challengers can challenge the eligibility of voters. It has to be in good faith under the law, and so they would have to produce some evidence that the person is not eligible to vote in order to have a challenge sustained. And again, the voter should ask to be sworn, provide the requested information, and then they should be able to vote. So the highlights reel, I'll kick it back to China or Kina.
I'll jump in. Hi, everybody. My name is Kina Jackson. I'm with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. And I'll just go quickly over the highlights reel. So the goal here is to ensure every voter gets the opportunity to cast a ballot. Again, just a reminder, EP is nonpartisan. In a time of COVID, of course, we're hoping that all of you are wearing a mask, and we're encouraging you to do the same. Armani mentioned earlier, it would be great if you guys could show up to your polling locations early, get a feel for how things are looking, introduce yourself, and so on. Correct is always better than quick. So 8334 Turnout is your friend. It is there to support you throughout the day. Please use the number. There are experienced attorneys on the other end of that line that are trained to support you. They'll be taking your calls throughout the day, and they'll be waiting to get those questions. And again, when in doubt, call 8334-TURNOUT. Again, this is an awesome number. Call 8334-TURNOUT on election day. So we're going to just jump right into the question and answer portion because we're running short on time. I know that Brandon is going to help me out with this section. So he's going to quickly just state one of the questions, and one of our Michigan staffers will definitely jump in and answer.
So there's one question that says the clergy college should identify the trained volunteers as ministers. Can someone address this as it pertains to not being identified as a professional?
Well, we'll have a map for all of our clergy connected to the lawyers and collars. We'll have a mask that you'll be able to get through our state leads, who are Dr. Steve Bland, Dr. James Perkins, that will say 1-8334-TURNOUT, or it might have the actual number on it, 1-833-487-6688, so people know exactly what number to call if they have problems. That's the identifying feature.
The next question is, let me just pull this up. Why is the sample ballot for the upcoming election illegible when printed from the Michigan website?
That's a technical question that's outside of my legal expertise, but I would suggest calling the Secretary of State's office and alert them to that issue. It may be a technical issue involving the person's printer, but you can probably get some technical assistance on printing the sample ballot from their office.
By the way, the TurnoutSunday.com has an emergency voting information for Michigan at TurnoutSunday.com, and it will allow you, it has the phone number, the 800 number for the Secretary of State, as Julie Houck just mentioned. It has their website as well. And it also has the deadlines for voter registration, for the early voting dates, as well as your absentee ballot deadline. So check out TurnoutSunday.com for that background information.
The next question is, would it be possible to make the key slides from this presentation available via email to those who are registered? Also, would there be a link to the recording so churches can share it with their congregants at a different time?
Yeah, as far as Skinner Leadership and the National African American Clergy Network, we will post this on our Facebook page. It will be available, yes. And we can send out a note to everyone who, we have the email for everyone who signed up for the webinar, and we can send that out to them.
Yes, and we can have Cheryl to also send that or be available to put it on the Council of Baptist Pastors webpage as well.
Okay.
The next question is, will voters be turned away if they do not wear a mask?
We did not see that happening. I'm sorry, let me get rid of that call. We did not see that happening during the primary, and voters should, or the minister should call into the hotline to get assistance on that. We can intervene through the local election officials to see why they're being turned away and whether there might be a particular county guidance or regulation around mask wearing that's prohibiting people from entering certain buildings. I know that in other states where polls were located in courthouses or other public buildings in certain areas and where there was a high COVID infection rate, they were not allowing members of the public into those facilities unless they wore a mask. In most instances, in the other states at least, voters were given the option of having a mask and being provided with a mask in those situations. But if someone is going to be turned away from the poll, you should definitely call in to the hotline to report that, to see if we can rectify that situation in some way.
The next question is, can you provide more information regarding provisional ballots?
Provisional ballots are often the result of people being not on the rolls when they go to vote, but again, they can, fill out an affidavit saying that they are registered to vote, they're in the correct precinct, and then cast a ballot. It could be a provisional ballot, in which case, as long as the election officials can confirm that they are a registered voter and that they're in the right precinct, their vote should count. It should be a last resort. The voter should try to find out why they're on a provisional ballot and find out what that information is, offer correct information if that information is wrong, and be able to vote provisionally at least, and it should count as a vote.
Julie, could you clarify one thing you said? You said that if the person came to the election site, they did not have their ID, they could get an affidavit from the election clerk, I assume, right? That they are who they say they are. Is that the issue there? And then they can vote. Are they voting on a provisional ballot or a regular ballot at that point?
My understanding is if they sign the affidavit, it may be a provisional ballot, but it will count if they are on the registration list and there was some mistake in adding them to the list. If, in fact, they're no longer registered, their vote may not count. They have to be registered. So it's a good idea. If someone reports that this happened, go on to the Michigan website and see whether they are in fact registered to vote. If they are not, they can still go to their city or township clerk's office and register to vote on election day.
The follow-up question to the first question, the person hasn't the follow-up about the clergy part. They said the first question referred to the slide that said lawyers should not identify themselves as such. Does that pertain to ministers as well?
You mean ministers who are lawyers?
I believe that is what the person is asking.
Yeah, on that day, as was stated earlier, we are calling them election protection ambassadors. They're ambassadors separate from the trained election protection lawyers. So even the fact that they're a lawyer is fine, but on that day, we asked them to identify themselves as the lawyers and collars ambassador, because when they run into real problems, they're gonna have to, unless they're election protection lawyer, and most of our church-based lawyers are not, then they would be calling the 1-833 for turnout number. So it would be better if they had the mask on that had 1-833 for turnout. They know that they're part of that team and that they would call that number if they run into problems. When they say they're a lawyer, it means something. So it would be better that everybody is an ambassador, a helper, a supporter, a volunteer that day.
And this is Julie from the Lawyers Committee again, and it's our general practice in election protection nationally to suggest to volunteers, if they are lawyers, not to represent their lawyer on the field or even on the hotline, because we don't want to make voters or callers or people who are approaching us to think that we're representing them in some way. We're working as volunteers, we're helping them, but we're not representing them as lawyers at that point.
The next question is, can you partner with other religious organizations to maximize a joint effort to get out the vote?
We will partner with anyone. So if they're interested, they can put in they can contact us and I'll put in the chat our email address. Be happy to do that.
The next question is, have you provided a list of local churches in an area so that all efforts can be coordinated?
Dr. Bland or Dr. Perkins, are you on the line? They are our Michigan contacts.
Yes, could you repeat that question, please?
It says, have you provided a list of local churches in an area like synagogue churches and or NAACP volunteers so that all efforts can be coordinated?
Yes, we do have a list that we're using for purposes of this registration. There's an interfaith list that we are also coordinating, and then we partner with groups who are on this call like Moses and other faith groups. There's not one list that we're operating with currently right now, but around the state, we have key cities and key contact people who are working with them. whoever is asking the question, we can be prepared to give you whatever detailed information you need for that particular area, point you in the right direction. For the city of Detroit, feel free to call Council of Baptist Pastors. Cheryl Greer, who's on this call right now, is our assistant, and she'll put into the chat right now how you can reach us by email, by our webpage, and by our numbers as well. So if that listing is what they're looking for, we'll be able to help you in the region you're looking for.
Is Cheryl able to put your website in the chat, Dr. Bland?
Yes, I just asked her to do that just now.
Okay.
The next question is, if one is convicted and will receive sentencing at a later date as determined by court, can they vote in the duration?
Yes, I just answered that question in the chat, but anyone who's been convicted of a crime but has not been sentenced yet and is not already in jail or prison serving a sentence, they can vote. Once they're convicted, though, and serving that sentence in jail or in custody, they cannot vote.
And I believe this is our last question. I don't see any more. Can you volunteer in an area outside your polling location?
I answer that yes. What we'll try to do is accommodate your preferences when we start to coordinate where folks will be on election day, and from there we'll decide where folks are assigned to go. But we will take into account your preferences.
Yeah. Julie, let me ask a question. You said earlier that, this is Barbara Williams Skinner. You said earlier that people wouldn't be able to show up with signs or, electioneering signs, like for one candidate or another. What if someone is wearing a t-shirt for one campaign or another? They are a voter in line. What happens then?
They have to be outside of the 100-foot barrier.
They cannot wear that.
That's correct. That's passive electioneering. And they also cannot wear that paraphernalia inside the poll.
Got it. Okay.
Another question did just come in. I heard that some states were trying to pass legislation and that ballots could be opened and counted as they were received. I'm guessing they're asking if that's true or false.
I have not heard that. Some states that's occurring where the ballots are being at least processed coming in, but not necessarily opened and counted. But I can check on that and get back to Dr. Skinner and confirm what the truth is in Michigan on that issue.
Right, right. So our goal, I should just say that, and following up what Keena Jackson said about people's desire to volunteer or some place. I put in the chat, turnoutsunday.com. I will put in the chat our email address. If you're interested in volunteering, be in touch with us or with the Council of Baptist Pastors as well. Our goal is to have at least 4 cities in the state covered, maybe more, by pastors or church-based lawyers as ambassadors, and to have at least 15 polling sites in each of those cities in areas that have been hot spots in the past, to make sure we are literally protecting people who need to be protected in the vote. And we'll be working with the Council of Baptist Pastors and vicinity on those assignments and with the Lawyers Committee. If you're interested, I'm putting in the chat right now our email address so you can reach us. I actually in there, dr.williams.skinner@gmail.com. Let us know if you're interested in volunteering. And
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Another question just came in. Can voters
Who would you like to FaceTime with?
Can voters carry with them into the polls a completed sample ballot?
That's my crazy computer.
Yes, they should be able to bring in their completed sample ballot with them. There may be an issue if it's on their phone. If I think in Michigan, you cannot have your phone on when you're in the polling place. I can confirm that with Dr. Skinner after the call. But if that's the case and there's sample ballots on their phone, there may be an issue.
I'm not sure if that was true in the primary. I think they did allow phones in the primary
Okay.
for that, but we can double check that with the Election Commission as well.
Yes.
Did I come through clear and my computer was acting crazy? That I put in the chat my email address, dr.williams.skinner@gmail.com. If you're interested in volunteering, our goal is to have in each of our states, we're in 9 states, Michigan is one of them, to cover at least 4 cities with a pastor or church-based lawyer who can work the morning or night. We'll send the forms out so pastors can let us know as they register whether they're available in the AM or the PM, and we'll have at least 15 polling sites. So we want to make sure that election day, we're covering those areas that traditionally in the past have been problematic. We need everybody volunteering. We need an army of pastors and church-based volunteers. So I hope everyone on this call is volunteering. I look forward to get a flood of emails from you.
You see a hand was just raised. Pastor, I can't see the full name now because I allowed you to raise your hand. Pastor Deborah, I just gave you permission to speak. You can ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is, I know you bring up a lot about the Council of Baptist Pastors. I don't do Facebook, but if you want to send information so that I can get it to the AME Church, how can I get it?
I'm sorry. We can't quite hear her.
Okay. The information I was going to send to Council of Baptist Churches from this meeting. So how can me as an AME pastor get it to my other AME ministers? Because I'm not a Baptist.
Oh, I understand. I understand from Dr. Bland that they worked across denominations. Certainly, the National African American Clergy Network has all of the denominations. We work very closely with the AMEs. I believe the council does as well. I think that's their name, but they work right now. We've got to work. Everybody's got to work together. So we're all
Yes,
working.
we actually do. We're working interfaith. The council was just just listed because of the sponsorship today, but we are working interfaith and we are in touch with our AME churches. I'll be sure to send that information. I believe we should have had on the call today one of at least the persons who are on the coalition, but I'll make sure that we get that out. But you can get the information off our page where we make it available for everyone.
Okay, and so you have my email address. So I guess when you send stuff out to people that's registered, will I be included?
Absolutely. Everybody who's registered on this call will get it individually.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think, are there any other questions?
Do not see any at this time, so I think that is it.
Okay, I think the recommendation that Julie Houck made was a good one, or one of the other organizers, that the information page, the frequently asked questions that you could get at 1-866-OurVote.org. Make sure that as you get close to the election, you're reviewing those frequently asked questions if you decide to volunteer. We're 50 days out, so that's a long time and a lot of things happening in between. We want to thank the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights for their amazing work. China Baldwin, we want to thank you so much. I want to thank Amani and for Julie Houck for extraordinary information that they have provided us to get us ready for Election Day. Thank you, Keena Jackson, for helping to organize this. My thanks to our partners, the Council of Baptist Pastors, Dr. Steve Bland, for amazing work and leadership, and for Dr. James Perkins for the way you're working in Michigan across all the lines, all across denomination, and for Jim Wallace, of course, as our sponsor. We thank you, and thank you, all of you, for tuning in. This is an election that is going to impact all of our lives, so we are grateful to be. I know I feel more confident and ready just as a result of this webinar, and I hope you do as well. Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask Dr. Bland if he could close us in prayer.
Yes, and let me take this moment again to thank you, Dr. Skinner, for being such a warrior. And I mean, you know, in the spirit of Wakanda, well, we just thank God that you are actually blazing the path, and and you are accepting the challenges you have across the years. What a joy it is for Dr. Perkins and I and the council, as well as all of our interfaith partners and our attorneys and other persons who are coming together to unite in this effort. This is how it's going to take for us to get to victory. We are stronger together. And I'm grateful for you and for all of the election protection persons on your team who has presented today. Voter suppression is very real, as you said at the very beginning. And we need to take seriously every way we possibly can to push back against the forces of evil that will come against this process. Thank you again. Thank you all of you who participated. Don't forget, we will be registering or sending to those who registered information. Our next webinar is anticipated for October 5th. And at that time, the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, City Clerk, Janice Winfrey, persons who will talk about resources for election sites, and then those particulars will be given. We will confirm that information with you. Brother Hester Wheeler also will be joining with us, but that is for those persons, again, who particularly want to get that information about the drop boxes, the voting sites, all of that. We will have all of that listing by that time, and we'll be able to assist you. Let us all join together in prayer. Our Father in eternal spirit, how we're grateful for this information that we were able to receive today. We're taking everyday steps towards doing our diligence and our due diligence to utilize this God-given privilege we have in voting. Thank you for our ancestors and all of those people who fought and laid down even their lives that we might have this right and this opportunity. We're grateful even as their spirit speaks to us even now to press forward and press on like never before. Thank you for those who presented today and used the best of their expertise and their knowledge that they might be able to help us to be energized and mobilized to do this bidding on behalf of your people. And then, oh God, we just ask you to breathe on us that we might continue to have a fresh wind going into these last 50 days, moving to do what needs to be done, that we might have at least our voice articulated however we vote. Thank you again for this opportunity today. Blessings on every household representative, every leader, every attorney, every person who is given of their time and effort. And then as we leave this time, but never in your presence, we ask you to keep us united, keep us in your favor as we pray. In your name, amen.
Amen. Thank you all, and God bless you.
God bless you. Jim Wallace, Kevin Bullock told me to tell you hello on behalf of your sister, Marcy.